Hey friends, I have a question for you. How much hip extension do you actually have? Now, you might be thinking, well, Jen, I have a question for you too. What in the world is hip extension? Let's talk about it. So, hip extension is anytime your thigh bone is moving back behind your pelvis. Can you think of some times when you might be needing your body to move into hip extension? The most important and most frequent one that I can think about is walking. So when you're walking, as you kind of shift your weight from your back foot to your front foot, you're in hip extension here. And making sure that you have a good amount of hip extension can make your walking feel a lot better. It can also distribute the work of the walking to the places that need it the most. And if you're not getting hip extension, what else might be happening? So if you just get up and you think, okay, I'm gonna take my leg back behind me, go ahead and do that. Just take one leg back behind you. Has really your leg just moved, or have other things, other parts moved to help you get your leg back, to help your body feel that sensation of thigh back? So what are some things that could move? Well, one thing that could move is your pelvis. So it would be easy to take your leg back. So maybe your body takes your thigh back using the hip as far as it can go. But that doesn't really feel like very much to your body. So then maybe your body takes that same side hip and opens it up a little bit, because that lets it take the leg back even further. And maybe it even lets the spine bend a little bit, because that will help to take the leg back even further. But really, you're still in the same amount of hip extension. It's just that these other things have made it feel like your leg has gone further behind your body. So we're gonna do a test to see how much hip extension you actually have, and then we'll see if we can work on it. So come on down to the ground, come onto your belly. So I like to do this part on the ground because it kind of controls for those other parts of us that try to do the work of hip extension. So when you get down to the ground, you want to make sure that you can feel your hip points. Are your hip points anchored to the ground? And then you want to also feel your pubic bone. So you're really going to have to press your pubic bone into the ground so that both your pubic bone and your hip points are rooted to the ground. And this is going to ensure that you can't pick up one hip to help you get your leg back behind you more. It's also going to ensure that your spine is not doing the work of taking your leg back behind you. Okay, so just place your hands wherever's comfortable, your head wherever's comfortable. I'm going to keep my head up because if I put my head down, the microphone sounds funny. So, but I do probably recommend keeping your head down. So now just see if you can keep your pelvis really steady and lift your right leg away from the ground. How high can you lift your right leg while keeping your pelvis really steady? Now, do you ultimately lift your right leg really high, but can you feel the pressure come off your pubic bone and up more towards your hip points, more towards your lower abdomen? That means that your spine is doing the work of lifting the leg up. So keep your pubic bone against the ground, your hip points against the ground, and just lift the right leg up. Okay, it might not feel like it goes very far at all, and that's okay. And let's go ahead and put that leg down. Go over to the other side because it can be different. One side can have more hip extension than the other. So pelvis is rooted. Go ahead and lift the left leg up. Okay. I even lifted that leg too far. I could tell that my spine moved. So go back over to the right leg. Notice if your spine tries to move. You might really have to use your core to stabilize your spine. Okay, and go back to the left side. Takes a lot of mental focus. Go ahead and put your left leg down. Okay, go ahead and push yourself upright. So I'm not sure how high my leg actually was away from the ground, but I know that because, excuse me, but I know that because most of the time when I'm trying to take my leg behind me, those other parts of me do the work instead of just my hip extending. It feels like my leg normally goes a lot further. So when I account for that and control for those other movements, it really doesn't feel like my leg goes very far at all. If this is something that you really want to pay attention to, I encourage you to take a picture of yourself and measure the distance that your leg comes up off the ground. And then if you're trying to set some SMART goals, some measurable goals, then you can always refer back to that as you go. So how do you increase range of motion in a joint? Well, first of all, using it is really important, but there are some exercises that we can do to try to get a little bit more range of motion in the hips. So I'm gonna stand up and I'm gonna use a wall for stability. We're gonna do a few hip rotations here. So balance on your left foot, bring your right knee up, and you're gonna try to keep your pelvis and your spine really neutral as you take your right knee out to the side, and you're kind of resisting yourself as you go, imagining that you're moving through cold honey. And then once you max out there, you're gonna start to take your knee back behind you so that you're really exploring the full range of motion of your hip. And then again, bringing the knee forward. And let's reverse. Really moving slowly with resistance. Try not to let your spine move as you take the knee back behind you. And then you start to turn the knee out as you come around to the side. Okay, so that's one. Let's come down to the ground again. Coming to all fours. Okay, so from here, you're gonna cross your left shin in front of your right knee. And this is just to give you a little bit of resistance, okay? So from here, you're going to pull your right knee forward towards your hands, but it's not actually gonna slide because you're on a sticky mat and because you have this other leg here resisting you. And so you're trying to bring your leg, your thigh into hip flexion, which is the opposite of extension. And so you're pulling, pulling, pulling. Take a deep breath. And release. And now you're going to do the opposite, okay? So I'm gonna put my left leg kind of on my right knee pit this time. And now this time, I'm gonna be trying to extend my hip. Okay, so I'm gonna be trying to reach my knee away from my hands, but it's not actually going anywhere. Breathe, 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 breathe. Trying to extend your hip, but resisting yourself in the process with the other leg and with just not letting yourself move all the way. It's like you're activating the same muscles that would cause you to go into hip extension, but you're putting the brakes on them. And relax. Okay, come back up to stand. Come back to the wall. One more rotation here on the right hip, both directions. So balancing on the left foot, Take your right knee out to the side, going super slow, resisting yourself like you're going through cold honey. And once you come back, then you can reverse in the other direction. So for me, this takes a lot of mental focus, really trying to explore the edges of my range of motion without moving a whole lot of other things too. Okay, great. Now let's go ahead and do the other side. So I'm going to move over to the other wall now. Hopefully your right hip feels like super juicy. So balance on your right foot, pick up your right knee, and let's do a hip circle in each direction, resisting yourself as you go, as if you are moving through cold honey or cold molasses or thickening concrete. And again, as your thigh moves back into extension, trying to keep your hips in a line with one another, so not opening that left hip back behind you and also not bending in the lower spine. And going in the reverse. Okay, let's put that foot down and come to all fours. I'll face this way this time. Okay, so in all fours, remember we're gonna activate all the muscles that we would activate to move the leg into a certain position, but we're not actually gonna let ourselves get there. Confusing, right? So take your right leg in front of your left leg so that your shin is blocking your left knee from sliding up towards your hands. Okay, and here we go. Go ahead and drag your left knee up towards your hands. It's as if you're trying to bring your knee to your chest. Breathe. Keep focusing on bringing your knee towards your hands. This would be hip flexion. And relax. Now take that right leg back behind you and rest it in the left knee pit. And now we're gonna try, I'm gonna walk my hands forward just a little bit. Now we're gonna try to take the left knee and straighten it back towards or extend it back towards the back edge of the mat. And as we do that, you can feel how we're creating more space on the front of the hip. We're widening this angle. And relax. Okay, let's come back up to stand to the wall. We're gonna do one more rotation in each direction. It's hard work. So left knee up, resisting yourself as you go. Taking the knee out, really committing to exploring your full range of motion. Accounting for those parts that try to do the work for the hip and saying, no, thank you. I don't need your help. Okay, once you get your knee back up to center, we're gonna go the reverse direction. Don't forget to breathe. Keeping your spine honest, your pelvis honest. Okay, great. Now, let's come back down to the ground and retest and see if we feel like we can lift our legs any amount higher. And of course, if you're really trying to measure this, you could snap an after picture and measure the distance between your leg and the ground. So coming down to the belly. Again, you can rest your head on the ground, but I'm going to keep my head up so that we don't have a muffly mic. Okay, get your pelvis honest. So you got your hip points making contact. You've got your pubic bone making contact with the ground here. Now, lift your right leg any amount. Don't move your spine. So I don't know what it looks like to you guys. I don't know if this is true or not, but it does feel like my leg went a little bit higher. Felt like it had more room. Go ahead and relax. And now test over to the left. Don't let your spine bend. Don't let your left hip lighten. Yeah, again, it felt a little bit easier. Let's do one more each way. And left side. Great. Left foot down. Relax. Push yourself up. So, hopefully, the next time you go for a walk, or maybe if you have time to do this practice before you go for a walk, or even before you go for a run, because that requires hip extension also, you can do this class, and then you might have a more easeful stride. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time.